Julian?
Hello. Not much. It's good. It's no
Julian,
complaints.
have you been fortunate enough yet to get one of those jabs in the arm?
I did, yeah, last weekend. That was my weekend activities. I was super happy. I was able to get my first shot.
Dude, A, that's amazing. B,
Yeah.
so excited. C, I got my second shot today, as evidenced by this little sticker here, and I am on
Yeah.
cloud nine because I just want to take that vaccine passport, CDC card, and go travel the dang world with it.
I know.
Yeah, it's just like a whole weight off my shoulders. I feel so excited. The way I know Allison and other folks have felt in the comment section, I'm feeling that too. So super excited now to be
That
getting back to travel soon.
that little white card is one of the most valuable things that you can have uh right now. So yeah, that it definitely
Yeah,
is good.
it's really interesting. I've been doing a lot of media. One of the questions on a lot of folks' mind that people have been asking about is, Scott, what's the
Mhm.
deal with these vaccine passports? Some
Yeah.
people worry about them, don't know this or that. And the thing to remember about vaccine passports, such as it were, is that there's basically nowhere in the world that has said we will only allow in folks who have been vaccinated to travel to.
Right.
What almost every place that has any type of differentiation between folks who have been vaccinated and unvaccinated is essentially just creating a fast lane for folks who have been vaccinated. Think of it like an easy pass lane on a toll road where
Hmm.
it, for instance, if you want to travel to Greece, which just made some waves that they might be opening as soon as next week
Coming
for
up.
American
Yeah.
travelers. If you want to travel to Greece, you either need to show you've been vaccinated or you need to show a proof of a recent negative test. So it's like if you've been vaccinated, you don't have to do anything else. You're good to go. If you haven't been vaccinated, you're going to have to show that negative test. That's what a lot of countries are doing. Belize, Ecuador, Hawaii is looking about doing something like this where everybody right now is required to do a negative test, but they're looking about making it so that if you have been vaccinated, you don't have to do that negative test anymore. Everybody's welcome, but you either need to show one or the other.
Yeah, that's I already see people asking about vaccine passports, so it's a very good question to answer. But our very first question comes from Seth, and he's wondering where are the biz deals.
Where are the biz deals? Look, when those great business class fares do pop up, we absolutely send them out. We've had a couple great ones. I'm trying to think recently. There were some 650 business class deals to the Azores that we sent a couple months ago. There have been a few others recently. They're not nearly as common to see like really cheap business class fares. So I'm hoping that that they start popping up more often. But right now, we're just kind of waiting for those ones that are really good. We don't want to bother folks with ones that are $2,000 round trip to Europe, which is a great deal by normal business class standards, because usually it's like 2,500 or 3,000, but $2,000 is still a lot for that ticket. So we're waiting for them to really kind of come down. But trust me, we're monitoring. When they do pop up, we'll find them, we'll send them out to you.
Yeah, for sure. I always say this for almost any of these questions, but we truly are always keeping an eye on these fairs and these deals, and if we find them, we will send them to your inbox.
Yeah, one of the best deals that we ever found was a business class mistake fare over to Southeast Asia, Bangkok,
Yeah,
Bali, Vietnam for $600 round trip, again in business class.
yeah,
I feel like half of my teammates ended up getting that deal.
for sure.
I would have gotten it myself if I wasn't expecting our firstborn daughter a couple months later. It's just like, I don't think we can make this work. I don't think the timing is going to work out for us, but it was so exciting to see everybody else who was able to get that business class mistake fare for $600 round trip across the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, it really did feel like half the company was there,
Yeah.
which is awesome. I mean, that's great. That's what we're here for. So, Itzel asks, any symptoms? Scott, you can start us off.
No, so I just got my second Pfizer vaccine Pfizer vaccine today. Very excited. I got it this morning, to the extent that folks I know have had symptoms. They generally showing up like 18, 24 hours later. So check back with me tomorrow morning. It's one of these things where it's unfairly the fact. So I've heard that women tend to experience more symptoms than men.
Interesting.
So, my wife ended up getting, she just had basically like a long day of feeling like a bad hangover. I've kind of cleared my schedule for tomorrow. We'll see if anything pops up. If not, I don't know. I'll just be back at it searching for those cheap flights.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I just got my first one. The arm was sore. It was one of the first times that my arm was sore from a shot. But other than that, it was pretty good. But I've also heard the first shot, usually you don't have as harsh symptoms as maybe the second one.
I'll tell you what I did just go do is right before we hopped on, I ordered some little plastic sleeves for my vaccine card. So that way, look, I know, Staples and like Office Depot are offering to laminate these CDC cards for free. I'm a little wary of doing that just in case they decide we need a booster shot later on. I need to add more to it. It's going to be easier if it's not laminated, but I don't trust myself to keep this thing intact if it's just a little paper card. So I went on Amazon, go on any site, get a little 3x4 plastic sleeve that you can put it in to help keep it intact, that you can take it in and out of, but then you can also keep it protected otherwise.
I mean, for someone who spills water on my desk and keyboard all the time, that's a very good idea. So yeah, I may have to try that strategy. You did talk about this a little already, but if you can kind of give a quick summary, Ali Reza asks, what countries are open if you're fully vaccinated?
Great question. So there are dozens of countries. There are basically 4 buckets of countries. I'm going to try to run through this quickly. The first bucket are places that you can visit as an American today without any prerequisites. So you can fly down to Mexico, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic with no proof of testing, quarantine, vaccination, anything. There are some countries that are open if you show a recent negative test. Places like Aruba, Bahamas, Botswana, elsewhere, dozens of countries. The newest group of countries are places that allow fully vaccinated Americans to bypass any of those testing or quarantine requirements. So places like Iceland, Ecuador, Croatia, Belize, Guatemala, Georgia. Greece is already talking about next week starting to allow in folks who have been vaccinated and not have any testing requirement. And then the last group of countries are places where you effectively cannot visit as a tourist. Either you can't go at all, or there's a lengthy mandatory quarantine. So this is large swaths of Europe and Asia right now. So that's kind of the lay of the land. But it's all shifting really quickly, which is partly why I'm glad to be able to do these weekly Facebook Lives, because again, a week ago, we had no idea that Greece was going to be talking about opening next week now for vaccinated Americans, or even for unvaccinated Americans with a recent negative test. And so given that the landscape is shifting so quickly, it's nice to be able to kind of regularly touch base like this.
Yeah, you mentioned Mexico earlier. Is there a difference so Itzel is asking specifically about Mexico City. Are there any differences in restrictions or requirements for Mexico City compared to, I guess, other places in Mexico?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't want to pretend like I know every single thing, and every single travel restriction for everywhere in the world. I'm not aware of any specific restrictions that apply to one part of Mexico as opposed to others. As Ted Cruz so helpfully demonstrated for us all, you can go down to Mexico without having to show anything, no negative test, no quarantine, no proof of vaccination. It's coming back to the US where you are going to have to show a recent negative test, within the past 3 days. A lot of hotels, resorts, and whatnot, especially ones in Mexico that cater to Americans, are actually providing those testing those tests complimentary to make it just a little bit easier for folks who are visiting. You know, look, if I were to go to Mexico tomorrow, I wouldn't necessarily know where to go try to get a test before my flight home if I were on my own. So there are a lot of folks who, you know, a lot of resorts and hotels that are helping folks do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I also haven't heard of any specifics on Mexico City or any specific area within Mexico instead of just Mexico transitions. So how long do you think vaccine passports will be needed if that is something that comes out to be true?
Yeah. So again, if you missed the discussion in the beginning, like when we talk about vaccine passports, the way that almost everywhere is implementing it is more of a vaccine fast lane, and not saying that if you have, you know, for folks who have not been vaccinated that they can't visit, but that there are other hoops and hurdles that you have to jump through or go through. I don't know, mixing metaphors here. There's more you have to do if you haven't been vaccinated. So let's take Iceland. If you wanted to go travel to Iceland today and you haven't been vaccinated, you can do it. But you have to not only show a negative test, but you also have to quarantine upon arrival. But if you've been fully vaccinated 2 weeks after your last shot, you can show up in Iceland with just your little white CDC card and you're welcomed in, and without having to do any of the testing or quarantine requirements. This is how it is in Belize, but not with the quarantine, just with a recent negative test. If you have been vaccinated, you don't have to do that recent negative test. You know, I just want to make sure that folks recognize that when we talk about vaccine passports, it's much more, I think a better way to think of it is a vaccine fast lane than it being a sort of like no entrance undertaking. How long will that be in place is frankly a very difficult question to ask, because it's mostly predicting how long is the coronavirus going to be a global pandemic. And, you know, even though it's looking far better in the US right now from a global perspective, I mean, you know, we're at least a year, if not 2 years out from it being really tamped down globally. It could be a little while before those types of things fall by the wayside. All the more reason, if you've been vaccinated, to keep that white CDC card protected and help make sure that when you are traveling, that you're able to bypass any of those requirements and make it far easier if you have been vaccinated than if you haven't.
Yeah. KK says, guys, I'm so mad at myself for missing out on the Japan flight when the price dropped. Yeah, that Japan deal.
This was one of the best deals of the year. Just last week, we saw flights from like Atlanta, New York, Boston, Chicago, out to Tokyo for $359 round trip. Again, with dates well into 2022. You know, you could have gone for already had your flight booked for cherry blossom season next year. So look, when those deals pop up, we are so excited. We find them, we get them out to you as quickly as possible. If you missed out on that one, my commiserate. Like I've missed some deals in my life myself. It stings. It hurts. Let's pick ourselves up off the mat and remember that the next deal is coming sooner rather than later. You know, you can't get back that one that you missed, but you can get the next one. And then the last thing I'll note here is to think about the best flight deals almost like I call it the hotcakes principle. The better the deal, the shorter it's going to last. You know, when you see that $350 round trip flight to Japan, it doesn't tend to last very long. So you got to jump on it quickly. Jordan, I'm going to need you to kill time for about 15 seconds here while I go plug in my computer.
Yeah, go for it. Perfect timing. Allison, our good friend Allison, hey Allison, asks our next question, and she says, hey guys, I am trying to stay hopeful about my early September trip to Paris and plan activities. I think we all are, Allison. My normal go-tos are Expedia, Groupon, Airbnb activities, but do you have any hidden gem discount sites or tips for finding things like day tours? That's a good question. Scott, do you have any thoughts?
I would actually like to open that up to the comment section, because I don't feel super strong that I've found the secret. I found the best, way to do it. I've used With Locals before and had a good time with it. But yeah, I mean, Airbnb activities seems, what is it? Airbnb experiences,
Right,
seems great, but yeah, there's so many, places out there. I'd love to hear from others. I see Viator on there. Yeah, I've heard good things about them. I want to hear from others though, which ones you've had good experiences with. And yes, fingers crossed for Paris. I've got flights still to Spain in June that I'm keeping my fingers crossed is going to be open by then. Still cautiously optimistic. I think it's like 50-50 that it'll happen. I think September in Paris is very likely. But June, Spain in June, I would say 50-50 at this point. I'm watching it close.
Yeah. Nancy, our next question. She asks, she says, welcome to the COVID vaccine world. Where are you wanting to go first, Scott? What do you have?
Man. Well, my first trip is going to be in about 2 weeks when my wife and my daughter and I are going to go to an aquarium that we've got booked on the Oregon coast. And I am very, very excited because look, it's, indoors, obviously not the most like COVID friendly environment, but I'll have been fully vaccinated by then. My wife will be, and we're really excited for it. That's going to be the first trip, but the first like big trip is this one that I have planned for Spain in June that I'm just keeping my fingers crossed on. The thing is though, even if Spain doesn't happen, I've got a couple options. Let's say it gets to late May and Spain's borders are not open. They're not going to be open in time. I've got two options. I can either push my trip back, I can push it back a month or two or however long, knowing that airlines are automatically giving flexibility. They're saying that on new book, for these flights that you've booked recently, they're letting you change the dates without having to pay any penalty. That normal $200-$400 penalty is no more. But the other option that I have is I could fly to somewhere else in the area that is accepting international tourists then. So, Greece is talking about opening up next week, potentially. Croatia's already opened, Albania, North Macedonia, Georgia. I think Bosnia Herzegovina they're all open. So I could go down to Morocco. Like there's a lot of potential options, even if this specific Spain trip doesn't end up happening in early June.
Yeah. I mean, being flexible, being open. I mean, that's one of your mottos, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let us see. Our next. This is a feature request rather than a question. Emily says, "Please offer text alerts. I'd happily pay more for this feature." It's good to know. Thanks for the feedback.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you, to anybody, frankly, who has these sorts of ideas for how we can make Scott's Cheap Flights better. Like, trust me, we are working hard every single day to try to improve it, but we don't have all the answers, frankly. And hearing these, feedback from you all, I want to be able to, get alerted quicker in X, Y, or Z fashion. It really does help kind of guide how we improve things and how we build SCF. So thank you, Emily. I appreciate that. And thank you to anybody else who is offering their feedback here.
Yeah. Nicole asked, do you think something will come out for Israel? I would like to go for my birthday in September. Scott, I have some thoughts, but go ahead.
I'll talk about the restrictions. They actually just announced, I believe, yesterday that starting next month, I want to say it's starting May 23rd, but don't hold me to that exact date, that they are going to start opening up for vaccinated Americans. They are, to my understanding, they will still require a negative test. That's what they've said, at least initially, but that it's going to be possible to visit Israel this summer. In terms of deals, I don't know if Julian, if you have any thought there. It's not super rare to see deals to Israel, but it's not nearly as common as deals to Italy or Spain or elsewhere. Certainly, if you're on the East Coast, New York, Boston, DC, it's going to be more likely. Anything to add there, Julian?
I mean, it's like your cheap flights and flight deals or something, because basically out of all of the airports that you just listed, we found a deal and sent a deal 4 days ago. So there was a deal that came out very recently, and we've actually been seeing. I would say we've been seeing Israel almost monthly, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. So we definitely have been seeing it come along. Definitely not frequently, but we have been seeing enough deals for it. And I'll always say, if we see it again, we're definitely going to be sending it out, and we have been seeing it. So I'm happy about that. So
Awesome.
hopefully,
Fingers crossed.
yeah, hopefully Nicole will see another deal to Israel very soon. Scott, you want to do 2.5 more questions here?
Yeah, and we can even do more. I've got like 7, 8, 9 more minutes.
Cool.
We'll see how long-winded I am.
Yeah, right. Right. We'll combine 2 of these questions here. So Bonnie asks, is airfare just going to increase from where we are now? And I'm going to combine that with Barry's question, which is, Croatia is open. What happens if you have to change planes in a country that isn't open?
I'll take the second. I'll take Barry's question first. Okay. Generally speaking, you can transit a country that you're not allowed to visit right now, but it needs to be a single itinerary. So you need to have a flight booked. Let's say you're in New York, you need to have a flight that's booked from New York to Croatia via, let's say, Paris or Madrid or Rome. You can't have a flight from New York to Paris and then a separate reservation from Paris to Croatia. It's a little bit complicated, but basically needs to be one itinerary in order to transit. It can't be multiple itineraries. In terms of airfare, where's airfare going to go? Good. I think it's mostly good news on this front. While I sent out an email about kind of giving my thoughts on this subject a week or two ago. And the gist of it is that while I think that the summer flights are likely to be, airfare is likely to go up for this summer, that's mostly because summer flights are always more expensive. Like well before the pandemic, basically every single year, summer is one of the most expensive times of year to travel. And the reason why is that you've got students and teachers and families with kids in school who can only travel during these months. And so when you have that funneling effect, obviously the prices are going to get more expensive, and layer on top of that the fact that this year there's such a spike in travel interest right now that I think you will see more expensive flights for this summer than they have been right now. And that if you're hoping to get a cheap flight for this summer, I would recommend booking your flight sooner rather than later. We're still seeing a lot of good, cheap summer fares right now, but let's talk in 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, will that still be the case? I doubt it. I don't think there's going to be many left by mid-May or late May. But the longer term prognosis, if you're thinking about travel after the summer into the fall, winter, spring, next year, I think the outlook for cheap flights is very, very good. One of the mistakes that a lot of folks made is that a lot of folks woke up to the fact of how cheap flights had gotten during the pandemic, seeing some of these like $23 round trip flights coast to coast. But they may have missed the fact of just how cheap flights had been before the pandemic. Now, SCFers, all you awesome cheap flight lovers, subscribe to Scott's Cheap Flights, you all knew that these have been around for years, but a lot of folks haven't been following it as closely and don't prioritize cheap flights in the same way, and didn't realize that, the pandemic didn't cause cheap flights. The pandemic illuminated cheap flights. Right. We have been living in what I call the golden age of cheap flights, and we've been living in it since 2015. It's never been cheaper to travel, internationally or domestically as it is now. And those factors that caused this cheap flight golden age to exist for years leading up to the pandemic continue to be in place coming out of the pandemic. I'll give you just a 30-second synopsis of what that is. I have a longer explanation in Take More Vacation available for pre-order. Coming out May 11th. If you have pre-ordered, please let me know in the comment section. I want to shout you out as always because you're the real MVP. But the reason why, from 30-second overview of why we've been living in the golden age of cheap flights, is that 30 or 40 years ago, the airlines made the vast majority of their revenue on your economy airfare. It mattered a ton to them what you paid for that coach seat. And so flying was a luxury good back then. Everybody who was flying was paying a lot to do so. Nowadays, airlines are making most of their money on things other than your economy airfare. They're making it on selling frequent flyer miles and credit cards. They're making it on selling premium seats, business class seats. They're making it on corporate contracts and cargo. all these revenue streams that are making it so that your economy airfare just doesn't matter to the airlines in nearly the way it used to. And that's why airlines are able to offer much cheaper flights than they had 3 or 4 decades ago.
Should have timed that. I mean, but I think that was probably 30 seconds exactly. I think you got it. Yeah. All right. So two comments, and then we'll get through two quick questions, and then I'll let you go. I'm just trying to give as much time to the public as possible. Len says, I have heard it is best not to laminate, so make some copies. And then maybe to no one's surprise, Allison's ahead of the game already. She says, I too have the plastic sleeve, was impressed by the thickness of the plastic. She just always knows what's
she's on her game.
To do. I know.
Never misses out that Allison.
We have a question from Nicole. Nicole says, I was down in NYC last week. Central Park was very busy. Might have passed each other with locals, but I didn't see many tourists anywhere in the city. Do you think we will see places like Paris, Rome, and London being pretty empty even when they do open up?
Ooh, this is a really good question. I think it depends a little bit on when you go and where you go. I would expect that the top tourist spots that are accessible are going to be very full. I think Hawaii, Cancun, Puerto Rico. I took a look at the number of flight searches to Hawaii. Not only are there more people searching for flights to Hawaii right now than there had been searching in April of 2019, well before the pandemic. It wasn't just a little bit more right now. It's 50% more people are searching for flights right now than had the same time 2 years ago. Yeah. And so, look, I those sort of like iconic top tourist favorites, I think, as folks start to, get more, as vaccinations accelerate, people start to feel more comfortable and safe traveling. You are going to see, I think, those real top of the top places get really full, because who doesn't want to go to somewhere iconic and epic for that first trip after, you've been vaccinated, after you feel good traveling again. But, it's going to be a patchwork, because look, there's some places where it's going to be a little bit easier, some places a little bit harder, some places a little bit further. So I don't think everywhere is going to get full instantly, but I would expect that there are going to be some places that are going to feel pretty quickly like it was pre-pandemic.
Yep, fully agree. KK says Scott's snaps are one of the highlights of Facebook Live. So there you go. All right, final question. It's a simple one, but it could be a tough one. Mario asks, what's that one food item you miss from a destination? For him, it's Ringo apple pies from Ikebukuro, Japan. I probably destroyed that, but yeah.
Gosh, well, I was going to say one of the things I love down in Oaxaca, I kind of want to say chapulines. These are the fried grasshoppers. I'm going to set aside chapulines. I love going down there and being able to order delicious barbecued meats, but you order by the kilo. So like, I'll take, a kilo of beefsteak and a kilo al pastor, whatever it is. And they just like throw it all on, give you a bunch of tortillas and fried poblano peppers. And it is amazing. Such a great experience and delicious. I think that's what I really miss the most when I'm like, gun in my head, what's that one thing? What about you, Julian?
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'll say probably I've been craving California burritos from San Diego. That's probably the one. Yeah, you can't go wrong with it. So
indeed. Yeah. Well, listen, I've got to run. I got another meeting. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for the great questions. Thank you for everybody who's pre-ordered the book. I see you, Alicia. I think Ali Reza, Nancy. I know Allison's been there. Thank you all. You all are awesome. I appreciate you so much. If you haven't yet and you are interested in making cheap flights a bigger part of your life, take more vacations out for available for pre-order now. It's going to be out May 11th. All right, y'all.